Great stories usually have a plot twist that the main character never saw coming. When that's in a memoir, it's all the more compelling. That's certainly the case with Tom Wilson's story. It first came out in his book titled Beautiful Scars, and now it's a captivating documentary by the same name. Tom Wilson is a three-time Juno-winning Canadian musician and artist, and we're delighted to welcome him back to our studio. We're also joined by his daughter, Madeline Wilson, and her baby, Sam. Hi, Sam. Welcome to you all. Hi, Sam. It's so nice to have you all in the studio. We just all got quiet very much.
Sam is not happy about this now at all.
And Sam's giving me that look like, who is this lady and what is she talking about? But I should say that I don't know if we've ever had a baby on set, so it's really special to have you here with your daughter and your grandchild.
My grandson, and you have me.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, because, I read your book a few years ago and you were in studio and we spoke about that. But in this documentary, at the end of it, I was in tears. I was bawling. And in the documentary at the end, you say that everything you create now has a purpose because you know who you are. Do you feel like after decades of searching and grappling with identity, you are shining now?
Well, the idea that without identity, we have nothing to offer the world. And now suddenly, I've been working to be an artist for my entire life. And now suddenly with identity, I have a purpose and I have a direction. And everything has changed for me. And every day that I wake up to create is that much better.
And Madeline, you've been in the music industry for a very long time, but you obviously are his daughter and you saw the ups and downs. What was it like to put this documentary together as a family?
It's really interesting. It's been an interesting journey because it's been a long time coming, right? So, I mean, the book and the documentary kind of truncates the whole story for you, but for us, it's been...
What do you mean when you say it's been a long time coming?
Hills and valleys, I guess. I think that it's like one step forward, two steps back. We've found little pieces along the way and then paused for a long time. So getting little tidbits of Tom's, the secret as we called it in the family, little tidbits, but never really the full piece. So, by the time we got to the point where Janie came to us and came to my dad and shared her truth, I was ready for it. And I think that the process of putting the documentary together has been a really healing process for all of us. We're able to really step back and look at all of the pieces and analyze them from different perspectives, right? So the perspective of the person that has experienced it or the family member that's experienced it, but also someone who is looking at the landscape of this country when we talk about what it means to be Indigenous and what Indigenous identity is. So. Being able to look at it through that lens, kind of in a more objective way, is really interesting as well.
You mentioned Janie, and Janie grew up as Tom's cousin, but turned out to be your mother. And we'll talk a little bit more about her. But there's something that you said that I thought was so interesting, because you're a parent, you have three children. Do you think that you understood your father better after you became a parent? Or did you notice a shift in him when he went on this path to find out who he was?
Certainly. I think, I could make a joke about never really understanding my dad. But certainly, there has been a feeling, it's almost like we've all clicked into place. There's been the sense that my dad is really grounded in who he is now. And he talks about it. That piece about identity is so important because it really does give you purpose, and it really gives you a sense of self. And that we see that in his art. My dad has always been a really interesting artist, but there is a depth to his work now that I think comes from where we are.
And you called him out about the art, but we'll get into that in a few moments.
We can clarify.
Yeah, we can get into that in a second. But your son Thompson is also in the documentary. Do you feel like your children understand you better now that you have the backstory to who you are?
Well, I've been really close with my kids and now my grandkids. That bond has taken different shapes. Madeline and I work together promoting concerts in Hamilton. She managed Blackie and the Rodeo Kings with Alan Moy. My son came on the road with me when he was 16 and was on the road with me through high school. And I mean, I went up to his bedroom, my bass player quit, and I had a show in Philadelphia. And I said, hey, listen, what are you doing? Do you know these songs well enough to come in and do a show? He goes, yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. And that's how it started. So, I mean, he worked with me and wrote with me and recorded with me, created with me for many, many years. So we have an understanding on that level. Madeleine and I have an understanding in that I was completely out of my mind in my 20s when Madeleine was born. And Madeleine, I continued to be out of my mind, but I definitely had a sense that I had somebody on the planet that I knew I belonged with. And before that, without having that sense of identity, I was kind of like a kite without a string for my entire life. And then Madeleine came along, and I felt like I had finally had somebody that was blood on blood, that blood on blood feeling that I'd been looking for.
I think Sam is saying, don't forget about me.
Yeah, oh yeah, Sam.
It must be.
You know what, Sam's going to end up, he's going to get thrown off the show like Richard Pryor got thrown off the Mike Douglas show back in the 70s.
You can stay as long as you want, Sam. When you're ready, just let us know. But it must be such a trip to have grandchildren.
Well, yeah, surprise, surprise. You know, all my grandsons were surprises, and they're welcome surprises. I mean, it's been a family that has been welcoming surprises our entire lives.
Okay, yeah. I want to share a clip of the documentary with the audience because we haven't seen anything yet. Lorraine, please roll.
When you start digging into the truths of your life that you actually weren't aware of, it jars your memories.
Someone decided that it needed to be a secret. His world was unraveling.
There's nothing you can do. This whole world's starting to crumble on him because of it.
He didn't know what his history was.
My dad didn't know that he was missed. Meanwhile, back home, there were people that knew of him, who thought of him, who missed him, who wondered about him.
We always knew that Grandma Bunny was not Tom's mother.
And she said, there's secrets about you that I'll take to my grave.
In the clip, Madeleine, you were pregnant with Sam, and the secrets being taken to the grave, that didn't happen. Tom, what did you learn late in your life?
Well, 9 years ago, I found out from a stranger that Bunny and George Wilson were not my mother and father. Now, Bunny and George, the math, it didn't add up. Bunny and George were too old, really, to be having kids, especially in that era. You know, people are now having careers and lives and then having children. That wasn't the case back in the 50s. So George Wilson was blinded in the Second World War. He was a tail gunner and a Lancaster bomber. For those viewers that don't know, tail gunner position in Lancaster and Halifax bombers in the Second World War were known as the suicide seat. Most of the young men, boys that sat in that seat didn't make it home. George Wilson did make it home with massive head injury, totally blind, and his own loss of who he was, and no chance to reinvent himself. So there was George, and then there was Bunny Wilson, who was also older. She was probably 47 when I came into their home. And she was a French-Canadian gal. She had the temperament of a scalded cat. And, you know.
That's very descriptive.
I happen to be a writer. So, yeah, so she... that household really, a child really didn't belong in that household, but somehow I grew up there. I was kind of like Marilyn from the Munsters, you know what I mean? I was this flower growing up in the middle of stone and gravel. They were the most loving people that I could ever imagine. Bunny Wilson is still the greatest person I'll ever know. Mm-hmm. But finding out about this at the age of 53, this journey has just begun for me. I found out that not only am I not the puffy, sweaty Irish guy that I thought I was, I'm actually Mohawk. And while driving my cousin Janie home from one of my grandson's birthday parties, I was driving her home a couple weeks after I'd found this out. And I said, Janie, I found out that Mom and Dad weren't really my mom and dad, and if you ever remember anything, I know you were close with them. And she turned to me and said, Tom, I don't know how to tell you this, and I'm sorry, and I hope you forgive me, but I'm your mother. Janie is Mohawk from Ganawage. My father was Mohawk from Ganawage. I am now accepted, and the paperwork is there to prove that I am now a Mohawk of Mohawk territory in Ganawage.
I want to follow up quickly, but Madeleine, if Sam needs to take a little break, I can ask you the question if
Sure.
you want to.
Sure. You want to go see
exchange.
Grandpa?
Yeah, because when your dad is talking about finding out his identity, but I just want to go back a little bit to talk a little bit about Bunny,
Yeah.
because Bunny was your grandmother, and there must be some complicated feelings about that relationship, because she held this secret and essentially kept his mom away from him, your grandmother away from you for so long. How would you describe how, I guess, have you reconciled those feelings about her?
I think that it's real, honestly, I don't know. How's that? I think that I have moments where, like, my love for Bunny is so big and it's so powerful, and that's all that I see. But as a mother, hearing how Janie was kept from her baby, it really challenges not my love for Bunny, but my understanding for Bunny, and for what I knew Bunny to be. Because for me, growing up, she was really the champion of the underdog. Had the biggest heart I've ever known. Has taught me so much I know about my own empathy. And so the coldness that came with keeping Janie away is, want to come see me? Speaking of which, is challenging.
Yeah. It must be, because I think a lot of people who have been adopted don't get the opportunity to be reunited with their parents, their birth parents. What's it been like to have that gift given to you as a grandchild and to you as a son?
Well, we were always together, Janie and I. She was my first cousin. She was always on the fringe of whatever was happening. Even in the video, the very few video clips we have of her and Bunny together, you know, the party's going on, the kids are opening presents, there's songs going on, Bunny's helping with the food, and Janie is kind of on the border, you know, standing back, not to make too much of herself in the situation. She lived her entire life like that, oppressed like that. She was a woman that was allowed to be in the same household as her baby, but wasn't allowed to bathe me or pick me up when I was crying or feed me or anything like that.
She wasn't even allowed to hold you when she gave birth to you.
No, I was taken right from her. She knew that I was born at about 8:10 in the morning, because before they put her out, after she gave birth to me, she looked at the clock and saw that time. I was taken right from her and given over to the Catholic Children's Aid and put into a nursery, and she wandered the halls of St. Joseph's Hospital in Hamilton, looking in at the nursery, wondering which baby was hers, not knowing if I was a boy or if I was a girl. So this is a woman who, by the way, I took to her foot doctor, several foot doctor appointments yesterday, who is, in case you don't know, women should be ruling the world, but Mohawk women actually do rule the world. So she was a woman that deserves to be loved and understood, and she deserves all the patience and understanding that I can possibly give her. And we still aren't reunited completely as mother and child, but we are working really hard at it. We sat in one of her podiatrist's appointments a couple years ago. She leaned over to me, and she had a nylon jacket on. It was wintertime. And we'd never been to this doctor, and she leaned over, and the sound of the nylon jacket coming in, and she leaned over like this, and it was almost like she was going to do a silent dog vomit into my lap. And she said, "Today, Tom, I'm going to introduce you to the doctor as my son." Aww. And that was the first time in like 60 years that she was able to acknowledge to somebody, a stranger, that she was my son. And we went into the podiatrist's office, and she said to the doctor, she says, "Hello, doctor, I'd like to see you. I'd like you to meet my son, who I brought to the appointment today." So these steps, you know. Janie's 83, I'm 63. We've lived a lifetime together, but we've lived completely apart.
Madeline, in the documentary, you make a comment about how Janie would take the bus to come to like birthday parties, and it was kind of like, that's not something that a cousin does.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, she took the bus when my brother was born from Toronto. You know, my brother was born in Hamilton, and she came from Toronto to be there. She came around, I think, at some point when I was born, you know, with gifts, and she was always present. She was present in a way, like I said in the documentary, that a cousin or a second cousin just isn't. You know, we have family, and we have our aunties, but it was different. It was always different. It was always, and I think my dad describes it really well. Like, she was just kind of floating on the peripheral of the scene, but she was there, and she wanted to be there. And there was she carried herself with sort of a pride in those moments. Like, these were her descendants, and these are her children, and this is her son and her grandchildren, and she's quietly proud.
I can't imagine like the anguish she had to not even interject herself in your lives as I am this person. But we want to show another clip of the documentary. Madeline, you say in the doc, my dad didn't know that he was missed at home, like when he would go on the road. So we're going to take a look at another clip.
One time I flew to Costa Rica, disappeared down there. Cocaine was like $25 US a gram. Took LSD, almost died in the Pacific Ocean. I went out there into the water, and the LSD had already kicked in. Got turned upside down and started swimming as hard as I could, thinking that I was going to the surface, but I was swimming to the bottom. That's exactly how my life was at that time.
You could have died.
Yeah.
Madeline, as a daughter watching that, what goes through your head?
Well, I think there were a few times you could have died when you were away.
Yeah, I
So,
was a bit of a, gymnast out there, I guess. I was a bit of a trickster.
it's shocking. I'm at home playing with my Barbie dolls, or, in the backyard, and someone you love so dearly is out there. It's hard to hear now, but I'm grateful he's around.
You've talked about being Mohawk, and in the documentary you talk about being living proof of colonialism, how it erases the person. We also now know more about intergenerational trauma. To what extent has this intergenerational trauma touched your family?
Well, I think it goes on. I don't like to dwell on that too much because I don't want the power of what I have to offer and what the story is to be a sob story. I want it to be something that is enriching and inspiring, and you kind of have to straighten up your back a little bit, and you have to flex yourself a little bit in order to be those things. That doesn't mean that my vulnerability isn't revealed. And that doesn't mean that I didn't put all the truth down. And putting the truth down is so empowering. You have to remember, when I wrote that book, the first book, I'm writing the second book, which is in fact called Blood Memory, which has to do with the things that live inside us, our generational trauma, our generational talents, the things that are passed on to us by our ancestors, that live inside us and that are here for a reason, and that it takes time for us to recognize those things. But I don't intend in stopping telling my story, and I hope that I can at least open the door of possibilities to somebody else to feel the strength to be able to keep going.
I want to ask you the same question, Madeline. We should just say that Sam is decided to leave the set. Have some alone
He is like Richard Pryor on the Mike Douglas show. He's actually left the set.
He loves the set. But, you know, as a daughter and as a mother, I wanted to ask you that same question. Is this something that you think about or mindful of?
The intergenerational
Yeah.
trauma, absolutely. And I think that it's really important to hear stories like my dad's or you know, people in our lives, because intergenerational trauma is not an abstract concept. It exists in our lives day to day in various ways, whether it's through my dad's story, whether it's residential school survivor stories, but it exists, it lives and breathes in our lives in ways that you touch and you feel and can impact you and can shake up everything you know. And it can also just be this insidious being that exists in your home. And we need to acknowledge those, and we need to see that. I think, you know, you asked about being a daughter and a mother, and it's a really interesting place for me when it comes to my identity, because I am on this path where I am teaching my children what it means to be Mohawk while I learn, but I'm also teaching my dad.
100%.
Sorry. Sorry.
100%. Also, what we do with this knowledge that we have, what we do with this blood memory is important. So I work not only through my writing and through my music and through my visual art, but we're also getting trees planted back home in Ganawage. We, Madeline, with her drive, actually, we've started the first Indigenous bursary scholarship for Indigenous students at McMaster University. And then, of course, believe it or not, I got arrested for the first time out at 1492.
Only the first time?
Truly. Yeah, I know. I just could run faster than the other guys, I guess. I got arrested out at 1492 Landback Lane for feeding land defenders in Caledonia, Ontario, the land tract of the Grand River, which is 5 miles each side of the Grand River that was given to them after the War of 1812 by the British government, which of course has been just shredded and turned into Brantford, Ontario, Caledonia, Ontario, all along the Grand River. So I had heard that this was going on. I heard that there was terrorists on the Grand River. So I went out to see these terrorists. I brought food to them. And I went Schuyler Williams, and Layla Stats. And there was people cooking pots of stew. And there was people doing ceremonies. There was kids playing lacrosse. So those are the terrorists that I went to have a look at. And I brought them food, and I went out and played a couple songs for them and stuff like that. And then the OPP arrested me. That's, to me, the hard work, right? The work that comes to me naturally is creating art. The hard work is finding where to dig in and be active and make a difference so that you're doing positive work for the people who are out there throwing themselves on the line, and you do the hard work for people who want to achieve something that might not be attainable to them without a bursary at McMaster University to help them out.
You mentioned art, and we have some of your pieces to show. But in the documentary, there's a moment where you called out your dad for cultural appropriation. Madeline, you want to talk about that?
Yes, well, on the journey of finding identity, one of the pieces, I started long before my dad was there.
There's some art there. There's your art there, yeah.
Long before my dad was there, long before Janie came forward, I started doing my own digging, and so it was digging into what our Mohawk identity could look like. And one of the ways I thought I could convince my dad to dig a bit harder himself was to threaten him. So I said, Dad, because his art is incredible, and it was very popular. He was selling all this art, and I said, you know, if you're just out there as a white guy selling this art, you're going to be accused of cultural appropriation.
I didn't know what that meant.
No, I think we still are working on that.
But now when you look at it, do you think, you talked about Blood Memory, but it was there all along.
It was there all along. I've been painting like this since 1997. I started painting because I was trying to stop drinking in 1997. I've been successfully clean and sober for 23 years. But this is what I was painting because this is what came naturally to me, were simple shapes and detail. And now my work has evolved, and we've evolved it even into exhibits, exhibitions, installations. One installation is at the Stratford Festival, and it is dealing with identity in residential schools. We built 9 school desks, and we burned the images of families, including my great-grandfather, Peter Lazar, into the tops of the desks. And as you move forward, the images start to disappear, representing the loss of identity and language and culture. And I also, a film component goes with that. And then I built 2 8-foot nuns, and building the nuns wasn't enough. So I splattered blood on their faces and put them in the schoolroom, so that we have to face this as a country, and we have to look at something that we might wander into as a little art exhibit, but we have to see what this country has done has been responsible for one of the grossest and most inhumane acts against other human beings in the history of the world, Canada. So let's start talking about that freely, and let's start really seeing what it is that has happened here, so we can start doing the work to try and make it better.
I should mention that this is one of your pieces. And when we talk about truth of how Canadians, how we start to look at ourselves and the history this country has, the atrocities that it has committed. At the beginning of the documentary, you say truth is a blank. I won't use the word. But in this journey to find out who you are, to find this truth, what has this given to you both individually? Madeline, I'll start with you and end with Tom.
I think I feel empowered. I feel really empowered. I think for me, the struggles of my own identity have been up and down, because he was adopted. I don't have a status card. What does it mean to be Mohawk? You know, it's been challenging to try and find my place in this. As well, because Tom is my guide, Dad's my guide. So it's like a little bit of pushing that's been going, like, I need you just to move a little forward, because I'm curious up here too. So there's been that, but one of the most powerful things that's been said to me that really made me feel confident in what I was doing is my partner's, we were having this conversation. I was talking about how I don't know, can I own my identity? Can I say I'm Mohawk? And feeling you have these moments of insecurity. And he said, your DNA is in the ground in Kahnawake. That's who you are. And it really is something I think about a lot. I think about it probably daily. And that is the truth, right? For our family, that's our community. And with that, you really think about, what does it mean to be Mohawk? How do you carry yourself? What does it mean to be in this family? And how do you carry yourself with respect to those 2 things? It's really important.
And Tom?
Wow, that's, Madeline and my mother kicked some serious ass in that movie, man. I actually didn't really need to show up because they're so honest and well-spoken. To continue to tell my own truth is important, because I was lied to my entire life by all the people that I relied on to guide me through this world, to introduce me to this world. I was introduced to this world. I was a lie. So it's my job as the last man standing to continue to tell the truth, tell what I believe is the truth. And in doing that, I guess I've broken a few eggs, but let it be known that my love for my mother, my daughter, my son, my family, my grandsons, and Bunny and George are paramount to who I am today. And, I guess, you got to sin to get saved, I guess. And let's just say that I'm working on the saved part now.
Tom?
I also just want to say that my mother didn't want to be in this film. And it was because of not only the artistic vision, but the truth that Shane Belcourt, the director, brought to this film. He tied everything together. And he brought over a dozen donuts and some coffee to my mother and sat with her. And she decided she was going to be in the film because he brought his heart to the table. So Shane Belcourt, we owe a great debt to Shane Belcourt on this.
It is a beautiful documentary, and I'm so glad that she was in it because I think it's also a legacy for the grandchildren and your family moving forward.
Yeah.
Tom and Madeline, thank you so much for spending so much time with us and also for being so generous with this conversation.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.